Hi, welcome to our channel of ignou audiobooks, Indira Gandhi National Open University, School of Social Sciences, SOSS, Master's Degree Programs, MA in Psychology, MAPC, Second Year, MPCE 0 to 3 Interventions in Counseling, Block-3 Other Counseling Interventions, Unit-4 Eclectic Counselling, 4.0 Introduction. In this unit, we will be presenting the eclectic approach in counseling. Eclectic approach is first defined and in this unit as a therapy which combines more than one approach in intervention. The unit traces the history of eclectic approach and theory and gives justification for this approach in counseling. The unit presents the various forms of psychological interventions and presents the various forms of psychotherapy and how and which therapies are generally combined. The cognitive therapies are then discussed and how these are combined with psychotherapy to suit the individual client needs. The various eclecticism approaches are described and the common ground for integrated perspective in counseling is presented. Leza's multimodal therapy is described in terms of the characteristic features of the therapy as an eclectic one. This is followed by reality therapy and choice theory with a brief account of feminist and systemic therapy. Finally, the advantages and disadvantages of eclectic therapy approach are presented. 4.1 Objectives. On completing this unit, you will be able to define and describe eclectic theory and approach, define psychotherapy and present how other therapies could be combined with it to make it eclectic, discuss the pathways of integrative approach in counseling, analyze how different psychoanalytic therapies could be made eclectic, define and describe multimodal therapy, explain reality therapy and feminist and systemic approaches, and evaluate the advantages and disadvantages of the eclectic approach in counseling. 4.2 History behind integrated eclectic approach to counseling. Most therapists work with their clients to determine the most effective treatment plan even when it does not include their preferred orientation or just one specific technique. This can sometimes involve elements of several different types of therapy. For example, a combination of behavioral therapeutic techniques and psychodynamic therapeutic techniques becoming what is referred to as an eclectic approach to therapy. Eclectic therapy is a style of therapy that uses techniques drawn from several different schools of thought. At one time, most therapists rigidly adhered to a single style. But today eclectic therapy is the most common. It is a more flexible approach that allows the therapist to adapt to each client's individual needs. Some therapists adhere largely to a single orientation, such as psychoanalysis or cognitive behavioral theory, but use eclectic techniques as needed. Others self-identify as eclectic in orientation, utilizing whichever techniques work best in any given situation. Either way, it is important that the therapist possesses a solid understanding of each theory for which techniques are being used. 4.2.1 Eclecticism Theory and Therapy. There are many forms of eclecticism, and in a way eclectic therapy is a pragmatic approach to therapy, meshing the various approaches together to fit the individual client who has approached for help. Good eclecticism is neither messy nor confused. For example, a typical eclectic approach in therapy is to view an individual from a psychodynamic perspective, but to use more active interventions, such as you might find in a cognitive behavioral approach. In eclecticism, there is no one right or guaranteed way of approaching any given problem. Each problem is tainted and changed by that individual's own history and way of viewing or perceiving his or her own problem. Therapists are flexible, working as a teacher for one patient, as a guide for another, or as a combination of all of the above for yet another. Eclectics use techniques, as mentioned above, from all schools of therapy. They may have a favorite theory or therapeutic technique that they tend to use more often or fall back on, but they are willing and often use all that are available to them. After all, the main purpose here is to help the patient as quickly and as effectively as possible. Eclecticism is not a new development. Psychoanalysis and its derivatives were the first theories to develop, and most of those therapists who were not eclectic adhered to some form of psychoanalysis or psychodynamic therapy. The so-called Minnesota point of view of Patterson, 1966-1986, was an eclectic position. The percentage of therapists who called themselves eclectic during the 1940s and 1950s is not known. However, according to Kelly, 1961, who conducted a survey, found 40% of the respondents identified themselves as eclectic. It appears that 50% of the practitioners today claim themselves to be eclectic. 4.2.2 Definition of eclecticism. Now let us see what is eclecticism in psychotherapy counseling. Most discussions of eclectic therapy involve combining two theories or approaches, and this is usually psychoanalysis and behavior therapy. At the same time, it is stated that there are as many eclectic approaches as there are eclectic therapists. Each therapist operates out of his or her unique set of techniques based on the particular training, experience, and beliefs. There are no specific guidelines or principles for eclectic therapy. Yet it has been recognized for more than 5 decades, Patterson, 1989, that there are basic common factors or elements in the diverse approaches to psychotherapy. The common factor at the simplest but concrete level is that two persons talking to each other. The same therapy at the abstract level can be considered as an interpersonal relationship in which the therapist's personality is the most important element. In between there are therapist behaviors such as expertise, authority, rapport, support, etc. and 2. The therapist's credibility, trustworthiness and attractiveness. Certain common elements of therapy include catharsis, suggestion, reassurance, persuasion, guidance, advice and direction. Yet some more elements which may not be very common to all therapies include permissiveness, non-judgmentalness, respect, etc. Trox and Kharkov, 1967, pointed out 3 sets of characteristics which they called the central therapeutic ingredients, and these were the therapist's ability to be integrated, mature, genuine and congruent. 2. The therapist's ability to provide a non-threatening, trusting, safe and secure atmosphere by his acceptance, non-possessive warmth, unconditional positive regard or love. 3. The therapist's ability to be accurately empathic, be with the client, be understanding or grasp the patient's meaning. It appears that there is a general agreement that the relationship provided by the therapist is the basic common characteristic of all approaches to psychotherapy. 4.2.3 Psychotherapy. Before we take up eclectic therapies, let us understand what is psychotherapy. As is well known, psychotherapy refers to special and systematic process for helping people to overcome their psychological difficulties such as anxiety, fear, depression, etc. All forms of psychotherapy have 3 things in common: viz. Client, 2. Therapist, 3. Contacts between client and therapist. The therapy consists of a set of principles and techniques employed in accordance with a particular theory of change. As many as 400 forms of therapy are being practiced today. 2 broad categories are global therapies and 2 problem-focused therapies. Global therapies help people recognize and change general features of their personalities that the therapist believe are the root cause of their problem. These therapies include the following: psychodynamic or psychoanalytic, humanistic, existential, client-centered therapy, Gestalt, problem-focused therapies focus on the symptoms and specific complaints of the person. They include behavioral therapies, cognitive therapies, biological therapies. In addition to the above two major groups of therapies, we have the following formats for therapies: individual therapy, group therapy, family therapy, couple therapy. Individual therapy is one in which the therapist sees the client alone for some period of time, usually weekly. Group therapy is one in which the therapist sees clients in a specially formed group, such as psychodrama and self-help groups. Family therapy is a format in which the therapists meet with all members of the family and point out problematic behaviors and interactions and work on the whole family to change. Couple therapy is one in which the therapist works with two people who share a long-term relationship. Thus, one may state that psychotherapy is the use of psychological techniques along with therapist-client relationship to produce emotional, cognitive, and behavioral change. Today, the largest group of mental health professionals describe themselves as eclectic, meaning they use different treatments for different disorders. 4.2.4 Brief historical perspective. When we try to trace the history of treatment of psychological disorders, it is seen that there are two broad groups of interventions that come about: spiritual religious healing and the 2. naturalistic scientific healing. While the scientific approaches have advanced to a great extent with research-focused treatment interventions and evaluations, spiritual religious interventions are getting relatively more accepted than before in scientific circles due to research and evaluation studies. The rapidly developing movement of integrated approach of psychotherapy and counseling came in early 1980s. This movement is based on combining the best of differing orientations so that more complete theoretical models can be articulated and more efficient treatments developed. Goldfried Castonguay, 1992.
In 1983, an international organization was formed for the exploration of integration of psychotherapy. The reason for this integration approach was that a single approach is not sufficient to understand the complexities of human behavior. Also, it was believed that no one theory has a patent on the truth, and because no single set of counseling techniques is always effective in working with diverse client populations. Hence, some therapists thought it better to develop integrative approaches as the basis for future counseling practice. Lazarus, 1996. However, it must be kept in mind that eclectic therapy is not haphazardly picking of different techniques from different therapies, but it is a planned strategy with theoretical and scientific rationale. Pulling techniques from many sources without a sound rationale can only result in syncretistic confusion. Lazarus, 1986. 4.3 Pathways of Integrative Approach in Counseling Practice. According to Arkivitz, 1997, there are 3 pathways of integrative approach in counseling practice, viz. I. Technical eclecticism approach, E. Theoretical integration approach, E. Common factors approach. These are being discussed below in detail. 4.3.1 Technical eclecticism approach. Technical eclecticism tends to focus on differences, chooses from many approaches, and is a collection of techniques. This path calls for using techniques from different schools without necessarily subscribing to the theoretical positions that spawned them. Technical eclecticism seems especially necessary in working with a diverse range of cultural backgrounds. Harm can come to clients who are expected to fit all the specifications of a given theory, whether or not the values espoused by the theory are consistent with their own cultural values. Rather than stretching the client to fit the dimensions of a single theory, practitioners are challenged to tailor their theory and practice to fit the unique needs of the client. This requirement calls for counselors to possess knowledge of various cultures, be aware of their own cultural heritage, and have skills to assist a wide spectrum of clients in dealing with the realities of their culture. 4.3.2 Theoretical Integration Approach. This refers to a conceptual or theoretical creation beyond a mere blending of techniques. This path has the goal of producing a conceptual framework that synthesizes the best of two or more theoretical approaches under the assumption that the outcome will be richer than either of the theories alone. Norcross and Newman, 1992. 4.3.3 Common Factors Approach. The Common Factors approach attempts to look across the different theoretical systems in search of common elements. Although there are differences among the theories, there is a recognizable core of counseling composed of non-specific variables common to all therapies. Arnold Lazarus, 1997, is the founder of multimodal therapy. Multimodal therapists borrow techniques from many other therapy systems that have been demonstrated to be effective in dealing with specific problems. Lazarus raises concerns about theoretical eclecticism because he believes that blending bits and pieces of different theories is likely to confuse and confound matters. He contends that by remaining theoretically consistent but technically eclectic, practitioners can spell out precisely what interventions they will employ with various clients, as well as the means by which they select these procedures. Practitioners who are open to an integrative perspective will find that several theories play a crucial role in their personal counseling approach. Each theory has its unique contributions and its own domain of expertise. By accepting that each theory has strengths and weaknesses and is, by definition, different from the others, practitioners have some basis to begin developing a theory that fits for them. It is important to emphasize that unless counselors have an accurate, in-depth knowledge of theories, they cannot formulate a true synthesis. Simply put, practitioners cannot integrate what they do not know. Norcross and Newman, 1992. The challenge is for counselors to think and practice interactively, but critically. Developing an integrative perspective is a lifelong endeavor that is refined with experience. 4.4 Common Ground for Integrative Perspective of Counseling. The question here is how one can use rationally the different techniques from various psychotherapeutic approaches in an integrated manner. While there are advantages in incorporating a diverse range of techniques from many different theories, it is also possible to incorporate some key principles and concepts from the various theoretical orientations. There are some concepts from the experiential approaches that can blend quite well into the psychotherapeutic and psychodynamic systems. Let us see how this can be done. Let us take up Freud's psychoanalytical approach and consider integration of other therapies. 4.4.1 Freudian approach. Whatever technique a counselor apply, she has to in the initial phase of counseling use free association and catharsis as important techniques in order to release the pent-up emotions and feelings. These two techniques of Freudian approach is also the backbone of every therapy. In other therapies, free association can be named as listening to the problems and conflicts going on in the mind of the client, but it is just similar to Freud's free association. No client will tell the exact problem in the initial phase of counseling if he is suffering from certain mental disorders. After the initial stage, the client may start revealing all those aspects of life which he sees negatively. Catharsis is also known as making the person feel less burdened by emotions and that which make him feel light and that which makes him give vent to his feelings by crying, shouting, anger outbursts, stress release etc. These of course to an extent advance forms of Freud's catharsis. 4.4.2 Adlerian approach. Adler always believed that a person becomes complex either due to his piled up failures or due to obstacles from the environment. Adler was concerned with the client's family and social system which influenced the client's life to a great extent. Adler always found that in his clients, there is a mistaken belief about their own selves. Mistaken in the sense that they viewed themselves and their environment inappropriately or inadequately, ignoring their positive aspects. Therefore, in his therapeutic sessions, his focus was to make the person realize the deficiency in their thinking and belief and tried to remedy the same so that the client can readapt himself in the society. Whatever therapeutic technique one follows, the above approach is used quite widely in the present-day therapies. In behavior therapy, psychodrama or group therapy, a client learns through rehearsals, and in cognitive therapy, the client learns to change his faulty perception through cognitive restructuring. From the Adlering perspective, therapy is a cooperative venture and it is geared toward challenging clients to translate their insights into action in the real world. One of the strengths of the Adlering approach is its relationship to technical eclecticism. The Adlerian model lends itself to versatility in meeting the needs of a diverse range of clients. Watts, 1999. In Adler's concept, there is further focus on to improve the lifestyle. If a person improves his lifestyle in holistic way, it not only improves his functioning, but the client is able to explore his own self that makes a difference to their own life and to the life of his significant others. Contemporary Adlering theory is valuable in the sense that it is an integrative approach. The theory is an integration of cognitive, psychodynamic, and systems perspectives, and in many respects, it resembles the social constructionist theories. The contemporary social constructionist theories, or constructivist therapies, share common ground with the Adlering approach. Some of these common characteristics include an emphasis on establishing a respectful client-therapist relationship, an emphasis on clients' strengths and resources, and an optimistic and future orientation. 4.4.3 Behavioral approach. This approach is based on learning theories such as classical and instrumental conditioning approaches. These therapies take the here and now approach rather than digging in the past. Every attempt is made to find out what makes the person behave as he does and the various factors that contribute to that particular behavior right at that point of time. In this, the individual's cooperation and participation are important as he has to observe his behavior and find out under what conditions the undesirable behavior occurs. If the particular behavior is linked to certain aspects of his thinking or the environmental factors, he has to change the same so as to make sure that the undesirable behavior does not occur.
In this type of counseling, there is also behavior rehearsal, that is, the person is asked to practice certain behaviors, like relaxing exercises, self-instructions to think in a positive way, to write something when certain thoughts occur, and so on. This behavior rehearsal is very important as the client is able to adapt this behavior to his daily routine life and thus give up the undesirable behavior. In eclectic approach, along with psychotherapy, the individual is made to do some exercises which the counselor feels necessary that the client should do. This can be role play, maintain daily routine, desensitize himself/herself from the fearful or anxiety-provoking stimulus events, etc. In this, sometime the counselor teaches or gives psychoeducation and training to the caregiver of the client. Sometimes through group therapy or family therapy, the counselor makes the client and family person to learn the appropriate behaviors. If a child is a client, it might be play, drama, etc. If a client is an adult, it might be progressive relaxation, anxiety or anger reducing techniques or behavioral modification techniques. 4.4.4 Cognitive behavioral approach. In cognitive approaches, apart from behavioral training, the counselor also focuses the perceptions, emotions, and thought processes of the client. His target is to break the negative schema, firm beliefs, and modify the negatively altered information processing of the client. In eclectic counseling, whenever the counselor finds the client having wrong perceptions and due to this he is unable to maintain his relationship with his significant persons, the therapist applies different techniques of cognitive therapy. For example, if some thoughts which are automatically comes in the client's brain and he is not able to control it. The client knows very well that these thoughts do not have any logical reasons. In such cases, the counselor tries to know the frequency and intensity of these thoughts and the situations in which they arise. Also, the counselor asks the client to tell about the emotions that come with these thoughts. Then the counselor gives the client different alternative or balanced thought to rehearse. After practicing these exercises taught by the counselor, the automatic thoughts get reduced with the cognitive restructuring. If the counselor applies behavioral techniques, then the approach is known as cognitive behavioral approach. In its behavior part, the client learns different coping strategies to deal with his inner conflicts and his interpersonal misunderstandings. In eclectic counseling, many a times a client needs to change his cognition, perception, emotion and behavior through cognitive behavior approach 4.4.5. The experiential approaches. Sometimes in eclectic approach, the counselor asks the client to do experiment in life. He provides different strategies to the client and asks him to apply it in those situations which he does not want to face or for which he is having certain negative schema. The goal of the counselor here is to make the client realize the reality of the situation and adapt different strategy to cope up with his problems. For example, if a person is having the false belief that people are talking about him when he goes to buy grocery, the client may be asked to listen to the conversation once. The client might realize that the other person was talking about the cricket match and might involve himself in the conversation. In this way, his false belief disappears. Also, in another behavior modification technique called as the flooding, the client is exposed to the real-life situation and his fear is reduced gradually. 4.4.6 Humanistic Existential Approach. In eclectic counseling, if the client is educated and intelligent and wants to go through counseling in order to improve himself, etc., then the humanistic approach of Rogers, client-centered therapy will be the most useful. In Rogers therapy, the client is helped to realize his potentials and counselor's focus is on making him fully potential. Existential approach throws light on searching a meaning of life. Every client wants his life to be meaningful and purposeful. It is the counselor's responsibility to make the client realize the significance of his life. Every person should be aware of his psyche, soul or being as well as his activities. Every human should have enough freedom to develop in their own way. Also, they should be aware about the surroundings and human values. On the one hand, their growth should not be retarded, while on the other the growth should be holistic and must not be against the basic human values. It also makes the client understand the universal human concern. This approach also deals with the personal freedom and courage that the individual should have. Bugental and Brack, 1992, see the possibility of a creative integration of the conceptual propositions of existential therapy with psychodynamic or cognitive approaches. They indicate that experienced clinicians of contrasting orientations often accept some existential concepts and thus operate implicitly within an existential framework. 4.4.7 Gestalt Approach. Gestalt approach focuses on awareness of the client. The client should be aware of his own thoughts, feelings, sensations, perceptions and emotions that are passing within himself. If he sees everything in a holistic way, not in bits and pieces, he may be able to understand the reality. The therapist or counselor tries to enhance the awareness of the client about each and every aspect of an event, a person or a situation. The client is provided many Gestalt experiments to do, so that he can improve his awareness for those things which are making him stressful. Also, it helps the client to be aware about those aspects which the client was not aware of earlier and that can change the thinking of the person in a positive way. The client becomes capable to see the world as a whole rather than in bits and pieces after the counseling, and that makes him positive. 4.4.8 Psychodrama. Psychodrama is an approach in which the client acts out or dramatizes past, present or anticipated life situations and roles. This is done in an attempt to gain deeper understanding, explore feelings and achieve emotional release and develop behavioral skills. Psychodrama is primarily a group approach. It also helps individuals to realize their role in life. The counselor writes the scripts according to problems of different group members and direct this script. The group members stand in a semicircle and play the script. By their dialogue delivery, they can understand their problems better. They are also motivated to change their roles from father to daughter, brother to sister, mother to father, and so on. In this, role rehearsals are used which are considered beneficial to understand the real situation and the day-to-day life problems and interpersonal relationships. Significant events are enacted to help the client to get in touch with unrecognized and unexpressed feelings. To provide a channel for the full expression of these feelings and attitudes, and to broaden the role repertoire integrated into other systems such as psychodynamic, experiential, and cognitive, behavioral approaches. Psychodrama offers a more experiential process, adding imagery, action, and direct interpersonal encounter. In turn, psychodrama can utilize methods derived from the other experiential approaches and the cognitive behavioral approaches as well, to involve clients to experience a meaningful process. According to Blattner, 1996, a major contribution of psychodrama is that it supports the growing trend toward technical eclecticism in psychotherapy. Practitioners are challenged to draw on whatever tools will be useful in a given situation. Yet, psychodrama is best viewed as an optional set of tools rather than a single approach. For all clients, Blattner, 1996. Psychodrama uses a number of specific techniques designed to intensify feelings, clarify implicit belief, increase self-awareness, and practice new behaviors. One of the most powerful tools of psychodrama is role reversal, which involves the client taking on the part of another person. Through reversing roles with a significant person, the client is able to formulate significant emotional and cognitive insights into his or her part in a relationship. This technique also creates empathy for the position of another person. Variations of role-playing and role reversal have many uses in both individual and group counseling. A few other techniques of psychodrama that practitioners can utilize include self-presentation, soliloquy, coaching, modeling, role training, behavior rehearsal, and future projection. According to Blattner, 1997, and Corey, 2004, psychodrama's value lies in the fact that its methodology can be integrated with other therapeutic approaches rather than acting in seeming competition. 4.4.9 Action-Oriented Approach. According to Corey's 2001 Case Approach to Counseling and Psychotherapy, the counseling should be action-oriented. Whatever techniques the counselor uses, it should change the person in a positive way. Clients should be able to practice and perform so as to make them mentally healthy. The technique should be easily adapted by the client to the situation concerned, and it should be suitable to the emotional state of the client. 4.5 Multimodal Therapy. This is a branch of behavior therapy and is a comprehensive, systematic, holistic approach to behavior therapy developed by Arnold Lazarus. Based on social learning theory, Lazarus endorsed techniques from just about all of the therapy models. In his integrative model, he keeps adding new techniques constantly while refining the existing techniques.
The counselor must understand the whole case history of the client. According to the personality and family structure of the client, the strategies of the therapy are planned. The counselor should make a framework of different techniques of different approaches to give interrogated and rational treatment in eclectic counseling. The counselor must select and apply those techniques on which the counselor has the best expertise. And the techniques used should be in accordance to physical and mental status of the client. In many respects, rational emotive behavior therapy, REBT, can be considered as a comprehensive and eclectic therapeutic practice. Numerous cognitive, emotive, and behavioral techniques can be employed in changing one's emotions and behaviors by changing the structure of one's cognitions. REBT is open to using therapeutic procedures derived from other schools, especially from behavior therapy. Aaron Beck's cognitive therapy is truly an integrative approach, since it draws from so many different modalities of psychotherapy. Alford and Beck, 1997. However, cognitive approaches is like a bridge between psychodynamic approaches and behavioral approaches. While cognitive behavioral approaches are more focused, structured and time-bound, the psychodynamic approaches are not structured to the same extent and are not time-bound. 4.6 Reality Therapy, Approach and Choice Theory. If the phenomenological and existential perspectives are considered, here the focus is on what the person experiences and what he realizes about his existence. In other words, the reality therapy requires both these aspects, that is, the experience of the person and what he realizes about his existence. More specifically, here T-reality therapy stresses on the fact that the he client is responsible for his feelings. Choice theory, on the other hand, challenges clients to accept their part in actually creating their feelings. For example, depression is not something that simply happens to people, but often is a result of what they are doing and how they are thinking. Glasser, 1998-2000, speaks of depressing or angering, rather than being depressed or being angry. With this perspective, depression can be explained as an active choice that a client makes rather than the result of being a passive victim. Clearly, the emphasis of choice theory is on how people think and act, and in this sense, it shares many of the themes of cognitive behavioral approaches. All behaviors are made up of 4 inseparable but distinct components: acting, thinking, feeling, and the physiology. The key to changing a client's total behavior lies in choosing to change what he or she is doing and thinking, and these are the behaviors that a person can control. If clients markedly change the doing and thinking component, then the feeling and physiological components will change as well. Glasser, 2000. 4.7 Feminist and Systemic Therapy. Feminist therapy is generally relatively short-term therapy aimed at both individual and social change. The major goal is to replace the current patriarchal system with feminist consciousness and thus create a society that values equality in relationships, that stresses interdependence rather than dependence, and that encourages women to define themselves rather than being defined by societal demands. Some of these strategies are unique to feminist therapy, such as gender role analysis and intervention, power analysis and intervention, assuming a stance of advocate in challenging conventional attitudes toward appropriate roles for women, and encouraging clients to take social action. Therapists with a feminist orientation understand how important it is to become aware of typical gender role messages clients have been socialized with, and they are skilled in helping clients identify and challenge these messages. According to systemic approach, an individual's dysfunctional behavior grows out of the interactional unit of the family, the community, and social systems. Thus, solutions to an individual's problems need to be designed from a contextual perspective. Feminist counselors apply different interventions, e.g., role-playing, bibliotherapy, assertiveness training, behavior rehearsal, cognitive restructuring, psychodramatic techniques, identifying and challenging untested beliefs, and journal writing. Feminist therapy principles and techniques can be applied to a range of therapeutic modalities such as individual therapy, couples counseling, family therapy, group counseling, and community intervention. Both feminist and systemic approaches are based on the assumption that individuals are best understood within the context of relationships. Most of the traditional counseling theories do not place a primary focus on the role of systemic factors in influencing the individual. 4.8 Advantages and Disadvantages of Eclectic Counselling. 4.8.1 The benefits of integration. Effective counseling involves proficiency in a combination of cognitive, affective, and behavioral techniques. Such a combination is necessary to help clients think about their beliefs and assumptions, to experience on a feeling level their conflicts and struggles, and to actually translate their insights into action programs by behaving in new ways in day-to-day living. Preston, 1998, contends that no one theoretical model can adequately address the wide range of problems clients will present in therapy. He says it is essential for therapists to have a basic grasp of various therapeutic models and for them to have at their disposal a number of intervention strategies. For him, the pivotal assessment question is, what does this particular person most need in order to suffer less, to heal, to grow, or to cope more effectively? Preston recommends that a practitioner's selection of interventions should be guided by their assessment of the client. This lends weight to the concept of integrating assessment with treatment. Once a clinician knows what the client's target problems and goals are, it makes sense to design specific techniques tailor-made to the client. 4.8.2 The limitations of an integrative approach. There are some drawbacks to encouraging the development of an integrative model, as opposed to sticking primarily with one theory. An undisciplined eclectic approach can be an excuse for failing to develop a sound rationale for systematically adhering to certain concepts and to the techniques that are extensions of them. If counselors merely pick and choose according to whims, it is likely that what they select will be a reflection of their biases and preconceived ideas. It is important to avoid the trap of emerging with a hodgepodge of unamalgamated theories thrown hastily together. 4.8.3 Eclectic Approach. A case illustration. It is a case of a woman who was feeling fear of hospitals, doctors and pain. After marriage, she has to consult gynecologist just because she was having fear of pain during the relationship with her husband. The doctor advised her to go to a counselor for it. Counselor elicited the case history very carefully with the husband and the wife. The counselor was able to know that some memories of traumatic childhood have been suppressed in the girl's unconscious mind. The counselor made an intervention strategy from different therapeutic approaches which appeared best suited to the woman's personality and family life. This strategy included some techniques of cognitive behavior therapy, some of the components of psychoanalysis and some of the client-centered therapy and couple therapy. The main problem was that the woman was not accepting the husband because she thought that husband is not as handsome as she thought he would be, and compared to herself she felt he was not good looking. Through cognitive therapy, the girl could understand those qualities of her husband which she was ignoring to see, and his very loving and caring nature for his wife. Through psychoanalysis, it was revealed that when she was just 2 years old, she fell down from the stairs and was brought to hospital where she developed in herself fear about death. When she was of 5 years of age, a doctor friend of her father tried to touch her in a very awkward way that she could not understand. She developed a fear of doctors and sex. Through behavior therapy, deconditioning and desensitization, it was possible to remove the fears from her mind. Through client-centered counseling, the girl was made to realize her potentials, and she was helped by the counselor to use her potentials to make her home and family a healthy and happy one. The woman benefited through this eclectic approach. Now she is happy in her in-laws' family and blessed with a baby boy. 4.9 Summary. Counselors would do well to consider their own personal style in the process of developing their integrative approach. The art of integrative counseling implies that there are no prefabricated models that fit any practitioner perfectly. Instead, the challenge is to customize a counseling approach that is tailored for each practitioner. Thank you. Subscribe to our channel for more updates, and we will see you with the next chapter.